I know everybody keeps talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you believe Malik Nabers could be the best wide receiver in this class?
It's possible. I think that when we came into this year, it was sort of a set in stone before the season even started that Marvin Harrison Jr. was the best wide receiver. And I think in the media side of things, it was almost sacrilegious to say anything against that, right? Where, you're just trying to come up with a hot take. But the one thing I think that really stood out with Harrison this year was he just doesn't show up on the field at times. You don't feel his presence, I guess is what I mean. There were a few games that he had that were great, and a lot of times it was against much less superior, talent. But when they ended up in some of those big games last year, the tight games, where was he against Indiana? I don't know where he was in that opener. He was not to be found. Where was he against Michigan? He was struggling there. And, you go back to that pick that Mike Sainer still has. He takes it back to the end zone. Marv had a wide open shot to sit there and jump that ball and at least contest it, so that maybe Mike doesn't pick off that ball. Instead, Mike takes it to the end zone for 6. So he kind of lacks an element of physicality, which kind of makes me think that he's probably a number 2 receiver. He needs, someone else to kind of set himself up to be productive. Think like if he were to go to Chicago, for example, that would be great because you've got DJ Moore there, who's already a number 1. You add Harrison to step in there as the 2. He's a Calvin Ridley type situation when he came out and started playing with Julio a few years ago. So I like that. But Nabers by himself, man, was absolutely electric out of the slot. He could play out wide. He's very explosive, and he's probably going to run a lot faster than people realize. I think a lot of people had him in that 4.4 range. He's probably going to be a sub 4.4 guy. He's not going to run at the combine, so we're not going to know, at least till his pro day. He had some absolute vertical ability. He's got some run after the catch ability where he could break some tackles in the open field, and he's got some field vision as well. And his route running, his footwork, through his routes is awesome. One of the things that was kind of interesting, I got the opportunity at the Senior Bowl to pick Jerry Rice's brain for a little bit, because Brandon Rice, his son, was down there playing, and we were talking about wide receivers and some of the different things that you're looking for with route running. And one of the things that he kind of pointed out that I had never noticed, and as soon as he said it, I could see it. I've been seeing it on tape ever since. When you're a wide receiver, you got to keep your hips down at all times. There's a lot of these wide receivers that think they got to throw their shoulders, they got to throw their heads, they got to sink their hips when they hit the top of the break and get into stuff. No, they need to stay low. And that's what, you watch a guy like Malik Nabers, he runs so low to the ground that he creates that separation when he gets into his break because he's already there. He doesn't have to do anything flashy. And if you look at all the great route runners in the NFL right now, Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson, they all have that in common where they run so low to the ground, they don't have to do all this extra fancy stuff to try to create separation. It just happens naturally. And, that's why I think Nabers is probably sitting there and is evaluated really well by them.
Bowers, what would you do if you were a team drafting in the top 10 with someone like him?
You've got to have an absolute plan for him, right? Because there's not many tight ends that you can line up as an H-back and line up as a running back, line up as a wide receiver out in the slot and put him in line, because people think because he's a little bit on the smaller side, he's not a great blocker. He can take care of his own as a run blocker getting downhill. But the real thing that separates him is he's super versatile. So if I needed a guy that I could plug into a lot of different places and scheme him, specifically into some of those, intermediate areas of the field underneath the reverse actions that Georgia would run with him, maybe even line him up at running back a little bit. That's something that's really popular right now in the league is, getting a wide receiver type that can play running back too. I think when you get all that rolling, it makes all the sense in the world if you got a plan for Bowers to take him in the top 10. I just don't know who in the top 10 outside of maybe Jim Harbaugh would have the creativity to know exactly what to do with him coming out at this point, because there's not, tight end is still one of those positions that people are still kind of figuring out how to transition from college to the NFL and get that immediate production. Detroit did a great job with Sam Laporta last year to get that production out of him. He was in the Rookie of the Year running. But, typically tight ends take 3-4 years to transition into the league. So if you don't have an immediate plan for him, you can't take him. You can't go that early.